Hey viewers, welcome back to Hidden Truths, True Crime Stories, where perfect lives crack under hidden lies. Today's story takes us deep into the quiet suburbs of Maplewood, where a husband's forbidden love shattered everything he thought was perfect. It began as a harmless friendship, but ended in betrayal, obsession, and a death that still haunts the town. This is the chilling story of he fell in love with his wife's best friend and paid the price. Let's uncover the hidden truth. It was one of those quiet Charleston evenings where the world seemed perfectly in order, suburban lights glowing behind trimmed hedges and the air heavy with the scent of rain. Inside the Harper home, laughter floated over clinking glasses. Emily Harper, calm and radiant, moved between the kitchen and table, serving her famous lemon chicken. Across from her sat her husband, Daniel, financial advisor, devoted husband, the picture of suburban stability, and beside him, Emily's best friend, Claire Reynolds. They'd been inseparable since college, Emily and Claire. To anyone else, Claire was like family, a comforting, familiar presence in the Harper household. But tonight, Daniel noticed things he shouldn't have. The way Claire's laughter lingered in the air. The way her hand brushed his when she reached for the wine bottle. Small things, harmless things, or so he told himself. Rain began to drum gently against the windows. Emily, tired from her hospital shift, excused herself early. "You two finish the wine," she said, smiling. Her footsteps faded upstairs, leaving Daniel and Claire alone with the soft crackle of thunder. Their conversation shifted, from work to loneliness, from memories to half-buried feelings. Claire confessed she hadn't felt seen in months, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel didn't know what to say, only that her pain stirred something dangerous inside him, a need to comfort, to understand, to be wanted. When she finally stood to leave, Daniel walked her to the door. Rain spilled down in sheets. For a moment, neither moved. Claire turned to him, her eyes glimmering under the porch light. "You're lucky to have her," she murmured. But the way she said it didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like a confession. Daniel reached for her hand, just for a second, and felt her pulse racing beneath his thumb. She pulled away, trembling, and hurried into the storm. Later that night, as the house slept, Daniel poured himself another drink, staring out at the rain. The phone buzzed once on the counter, an unknown number. He glanced at the message, frowning. "I saw what you did tonight." Daniel froze, the glass slipping from his hand and shattering across the floor. Outside, the rain kept falling, washing nothing away. The next morning, Daniel woke to the sound of rain still pattering against the windows. Emily was already gone for her hospital shift, leaving behind the faint scent of her vanilla perfume and a note on the counter. "Left early. Love you." He tried to smile, but the words from last night, "I saw what you did tonight," echoed through his mind like thunder he couldn't escape. He convinced himself it was nothing. A prank, maybe. Some neighborhood kid hacking numbers for fun. He deleted the message, poured himself coffee, and stared at his reflection in the kitchen window. Dark eyes, tired face, guilt hiding behind every blink. He told himself to forget it. By afternoon, the clouds began to clear, but the unease didn't. At work, he fumbled through meetings, his mind drifting to Claire, her voice, her eyes, that moment under the porch light. Around 3 p.m., his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "She told me everything." His stomach dropped. This time, he didn't delete it. He sat frozen, the screen lighting up again with a second message. "You should be more careful, Daniel." He looked around the office. Open desks, co-workers typing, phones ringing. Everything looked normal, ordinary. But suddenly, the world felt smaller. Watching. Listening. That evening, Emily came home cheerful, chatting about a difficult patient and dinner plans with friends. Daniel nodded, pretending to listen. When she asked if he'd spoken to Claire that day, his pulse spiked. "No, why?" he asked too quickly. Emily shrugged. "She texted me earlier, said you were quiet last night." "Everything okay?" He forced a laugh. "Just tired. Long week." After Emily went upstairs, Daniel sat alone in the living room. Lights dimmed, TV flickering silently. The phone buzzed again, this time from a saved contact. Claire. Can't stop thinking about last night. His hands trembled. He should have ignored it, deleted it, done anything but reply. Instead, he typed back, "We shouldn't talk like this." "Then why are you replying?" Her response came instantly. And that was how it began. Messages after midnight, digital whispers that soon turned into phone calls. She said she missed being understood, that Emily never noticed the little things. Daniel told himself he was just being kind, comforting. But he knew better. Days turned into weeks. The texts grew bolder, more intimate. They met for coffee, by accident, then for drinks. Every time he swore it would be the last. Every time he found himself answering her message again. One night, as Emily slept upstairs, he stood in the kitchen, phone glowing in the dark. Claire had sent a picture, her face half-shadowed, lips parted just enough to make his heart pound. Beneath it, the message, "You can lie to her, Daniel, but not to me." He locked his phone, dropped it on the counter, and pressed his palms to his eyes. His mind spun with guilt, fear, desire, all tangled together. Then another message appeared on the screen, this one not from Claire. Unknown number again. "You think secrets stay buried in this town?" Daniel's chest tightened. He looked through the window. The street was empty, wet from the earlier rain. But somewhere beyond the dark, he felt it. Someone was watching. He turned off the lights, climbed the stairs quietly, and slipped into bed beside Emily. Her breathing was soft, peaceful. He envied it. As he closed his eyes, the phone buzzed one last time on the nightstand. "Next time, answer when I call." And for the first time, Daniel realized whoever was sending those messages knew everything. The morning light over Charleston looked calm, almost forgiving, soft gold spilling over wet streets and quiet driveways. But for Daniel Harper, calm had become a foreign thing. His phone lay face down on the kitchen counter, buzzing every few minutes like a heartbeat he couldn't silence. It had been 3 weeks since that first message, 3 weeks of guilt, temptation, and sleepless nights. Every time Claire's name appeared on his screen, his chest tightened with equal parts thrill and dread. What began as a late-night conversation had grown into something darker, an obsession neither could walk away from. They started meeting in secret. First at a small cafe near the edge of town, then at a roadside motel off Highway 17 where no one from Charleston ever went. The motel was old, its neon sign flickering against the rain-soaked pavement. Room 12 became their world, where Daniel shed the skin of a husband and Claire pretended she wasn't betraying her best friend. Inside those walls, time bent. Claire's laughter filled the air, reckless and sad all at once. She spoke about Emily sometimes, her guilt breaking through her voice like cracks in glass. "She doesn't deserve this," she whispered one night. Daniel had no answer. He didn't know whether to comfort her or confess everything. By daylight, he returned to Emily, dinners, smiles, morning coffee. She seemed oblivious, still trusting. But Daniel noticed her watching him more closely now. Her questions came wrapped in sweetness, her eyes lingering a little too long when he looked away. Claire's messages grew unpredictable. "Do you think about her when you're with me? What if she finds out? I can't keep being your secret." Each one chipped away at his peace until there was nothing left but fear. Then came the knock at the motel door. It was raining again, and Daniel was late. Claire was wrapped in a towel, hair still wet from the shower. When she opened the door, a man stood outside, a motel clerk in his 40s with greasy hair and a blank stare. He looked Daniel up and down, smirking slightly. "Forgot to sign the guest sheet," he said, holding out a clipboard. Daniel scrawled a fake name and handed it back. The man's eyes flicked toward Claire, then back to him. "Enjoying your stay, Mr. Turner?" he said. There was something knowing in his tone, something that made Daniel's stomach twist. The next morning, Daniel found an envelope on his car windshield. Inside, printed photos, grainy shots of him and Claire at the motel, kissing in the rain. A note scribbled in red ink. 5,000. Cash, or your wife gets a copy. Daniel's hands trembled as he read it again and again. His mind raced. How? Why? Who else knew? The fear was suffocating. He met Claire that evening at a diner, voice shaking as he told her. She went pale, whispering, "Daniel, what if someone's following us?" That night, he barely slept. Every phone buzz made his heart pound. The unknown number still sent messages, short, taunting lines that hinted at secrets only an insider could know. You can't hide forever. She deserves the truth. Emily noticed the change. One morning, as she poured coffee, she asked softly, "Is something wrong, Daniel?" "You've been distant." He lied again, saying work was stressful. She smiled sadly, touching his hand. "You've always been a terrible liar," she said, then walked away before he could answer. Later that day, another envelope arrived. This time, hand-delivered to his office. Inside was a single photograph. Emily, standing on their front porch, unaware of the camera. Beneath it, the words, "Your turn to pay." Daniel's breath caught. This wasn't about money anymore. Someone was watching his every move. He drove home that night, gripped by paranoia, headlights flashing like warnings on the dark streets. When he reached the driveway, he noticed something strange. Emily's car was there, but the front door stood slightly open. "Emily?" he called out, stepping inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. His heart raced as he followed the faint sound of running water upstairs. The bathroom light glowed through the half-closed door. He pushed it open and froze. On the fogged mirror, written in bold red lipstick, were the words, "She knows." And for the first time, Daniel realized someone wasn't just threatening to expose him. Someone already had. The message on the mirror haunted Daniel long after he wiped it away. "She knows." The words felt burned into his mind, glowing behind his eyelids every time he closed them. But Emily never said a word about it. She acted as if nothing had happened, cooking breakfast, folding laundry, humming to herself. That somehow terrified him even more. Maplewood, their quiet Charleston suburb, was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Lawns trimmed to perfection, neighbors smiling from behind curtains. But lately, those smiles lingered too long. Conversations stopped when Daniel walked by. At the grocery store, a woman he barely knew patted his arm and whispered, "Hang in there," before hurrying off. Rumors had started to move through Maplewood like a slow, poisonous wind. Daniel could feel it. The sideways glances, the pity, the judgment. He didn't know what they'd heard, but someone was talking. Claire had become distant since the lipstick message. Her texts were short, erratic. "We need to talk." "She's acting strange." "Did you tell her?" Daniel replied. "No." "I swear." But he wasn't sure he believed himself anymore. One afternoon, as he pulled into the driveway, he saw Emily on the porch, phone pressed to her ear, voice low. When she noticed him, she ended the call quickly and forced a smile. "Just Mom," she said, but her eyes gave her away. They were cold, searching. That night, Daniel went for a drive to clear his head. The rain had returned, washing the streets in reflections of streetlights and secrets. He ended up parked outside Claire's apartment, staring at the glow in her window. He didn't go in. He just watched, until she stepped outside, looking around nervously, before locking her door. The next day, Claire showed up at his office. Her hair was messy, eyes red from crying. "She came to see me," she whispered. Daniel's heart dropped. "Emily?" Claire nodded, trembling. "She said she knows about us." But the way she said it, Daniel, she wasn't angry. She was calm. Too calm. He leaned in. "What did she want?" Claire hesitated. "She told me to end it before someone gets hurt." For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the air conditioner filled the silence, cold and mechanical. Then Claire whispered, I think she's watching us. Daniel tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. You're being paranoid. Yet when he looked at his reflection in the dark window, even he didn't believe that. Later that night, Emily sat on the couch scrolling through her phone. Daniel joined her, pretending to read. Her tone was light when she said, "Claire called me today. She's thinking about leaving town." His blood ran cold. Really? Why? Emily smiled faintly. Maybe she needs a change. Or maybe she's running from something. She turned the screen toward him. It was their security camera app. By the way, did you notice our system's been offline all week? He stared at her, unable to answer. She locked her phone and leaned back, still smiling, eyes glinting in the dim light. I'll fix it tomorrow, she said softly. We should always know who's coming and going. Daniel nodded, but his throat was dry. Upstairs, he heard a faint chime. Someone had opened the front door. He rushed to check, but the hallway was empty. Only a damp footprint marked the floor near the entrance. Small, bare, and recent. He turned toward the living room, heart pounding. Emily? He called out. No answer. Just the sound of the rain outside and a faint voice message pinging on his phone. From Claire. Daniel, she's here. Then silence. Lightning tore through the night sky as Daniel sped down the slick Charleston highway, wipers struggling against the relentless rain. Claire's voice message echoed in his head. Daniel, she's here. He replayed it twice, each time hoping he'd misheard. But it was real. And now Claire wasn't answering her phone. He reached her apartment complex on the edge of town, tires screeching as he pulled into the lot. The building loomed like a shadow, its windows dark except for one, Claire's. The curtains fluttered slightly, moving as though someone had just passed by. He raced up the stairs, pounding on her door. Claire! It's me! No answer. He knocked harder until the door creaked open an inch. The apartment was dim, lit only by the glow of a single lamp. Inside, the place looked ransacked, papers scattered, a broken glass on the floor, and Claire's purse dumped across the couch. Claire? His voice was barely audible above the storm. He moved toward the bedroom, heart hammering. The window was open, rain blowing in. The bed was unmade, damp from the downpour. On the nightstand lay her phone. Screen cracked, still recording. He picked it up and pressed play. Static. Then a voice. Claire's, whispering urgently. Emily, please listen to me. I never meant to... The recording cut off with a sharp gasp, then silence. Daniel stumbled back, dropping the phone. The truth hit him like a wave of ice. Emily had been here. He ran his hands through his soaked hair, panic building in his chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. He just wanted to stop the affair, to fix things, but everything was unraveling too fast. His phone buzzed. A text from Emily. Where are you? We need to talk. He stared at it for a long moment, then typed back, I'm at the office. No, you're not. His blood ran cold. He turned toward the window. Across the parking lot, through sheets of rain, stood a lone figure holding an umbrella. The lightning flashed, and he saw her face. Emily. She didn't move, didn't wave, just watched him. Daniel backed away from the window, panic rising. He left the apartment, running down the stairs, the storm pounding harder now. By the time he reached the parking lot, she was gone. He drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, rain hammering the windshield, his thoughts spiraling. How much did she know? What had she done to Claire? He pulled over under an overpass, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. He thought about going to the police, but what would he say? My wife might have hurt my mistress? It sounded insane. He'd be ruined either way. When he finally returned home near dawn, the house was dark except for the faint glow of the kitchen light. Emily sat at the table, calm, composed, sipping coffee. Her hair was damp, like she'd just come in from the rain. You're soaked, she said softly. Rough night? Daniel froze. Emily, where were you tonight? She smiled faintly, setting her cup down. I could ask you the same thing. Silence stretched between them, thick, suffocating. Rain rattled against the windows, and for a moment, all Daniel could hear was his own heartbeat. Finally, Emily stood. You know, secrets have a way of coming out, no matter how deep you bury them. Claire learned that the hard way. He stepped forward. What do you mean? But she only looked at him, eyes cold and unreadable. You should rest, Daniel. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Then she walked upstairs, leaving him alone with the sound of the storm. Hours later, as he sat in silence, headlights flashed through the window, blue and red. Police lights. He opened the door to see two officers standing on the porch, rain pouring off their coats. Mr. Harper? One asked. We need to ask you some questions about Claire Reynolds. Daniel's throat went dry. What happened? The officer exchanged a glance with his partner. Her car was found near the Ravenel Bridge. A pause. Then the words that split the night in two. She's missing and there's blood inside. And outside, the storm raged on as if it knew what came next. The flashing lights from the patrol cars painted the Harper driveway in shades of red and blue. Rain still fell in thin, icy sheets, hissing against the pavement. Daniel stood in the doorway, barefoot, trembling. The officers' voices were calm but firm. Mr. Harper, we'll need you to come down to the station, one said. Just a few questions about Claire Reynolds. Emily appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in her robe, face pale but collected. What's going on? She asked, though her tone carried no surprise. Daniel looked up at her, searching for something. Fear, guilt, anything, but her expression remained unreadable. She's missing, one officer said. Her car was found near the Ravenel Bridge early this morning. Emily's eyes flickered. Oh my God, she whispered, hand pressed to her mouth. Then after a beat, was anyone with her? No, ma'am. Not that we know of, the officer replied. Daniel grabbed his coat and keys, barely remembering to put on shoes. The drive to the police station blurred into one long streak of headlights and rain. Every memory of Claire raced through his head, their meetings, the messages, her laughter, her fear. It all felt like evidence now. Detective Sarah Monroe met him at the precinct. She was calm, mid-40s, with a sharpness behind her steady eyes. The kind of detective who noticed details most people missed. Mr. Harper, she began, sliding a notepad across the table. You were one of the last people in contact with Miss Reynolds. When did you last see her? Daniel hesitated. 2 days ago, at a cafe, just to talk. What about last night? He shook his head. I wasn't with her. Monroe leaned forward. Are you sure? Because her phone records show a voicemail to you, time-stamped around 10:43 p.m. Daniel's stomach twisted. He remembered it, the recording he'd found on her phone. I didn't answer, he said quietly. The detective nodded, jotting something down. And how would you describe your relationship with her? He hesitated too long. That was all she needed. Monroe sighed. Look, Daniel, we've already spoken with a few people in Maplewood. Neighbors saw her at your house recently. Some mentioned late-night visits. You want to tell me what was really going on? He stared at the table. We were close. How close? He didn't answer. She leaned back. Married man. Missing woman. It's not a good look. Hours passed. They took his phone, swabbed his car, asked the same questions from different angles. Every lie tangled deeper until even he wasn't sure where the truth ended. By the time they let him go, dawn was breaking. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the pale Charleston sunrise. When he walked through the door, Emily was at the kitchen table sipping coffee, the morning news murmuring in the background. The headline flashed on screen. Local woman missing. Claire Reynolds' car found abandoned. Emily looked up. They questioned you? He nodded. They think I had something to do with it. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. Did you? He met her gaze. No. A long silence filled the room before she said softly, You should get some rest. But her voice had that same flat calm, the kind that didn't sound like concern. It sounded like calculation. He tried to sleep, but couldn't. Every creak of the house felt like a ghost moving through the halls. He replayed Claire's final words, her fear, her trembling voice. Emily's here. That afternoon, Detective Monroe called again. Mr. Harper, we found something in your vehicle, she said. I'd like you to come down again. When he arrived, she handed him a photo, dark stains on the inside of his trunk. We'll have to wait for lab confirmation, she said, but it looks like blood. Daniel's throat tightened. That's not possible. Do you often carry anything sharp in your car? Hunting equipment? Tools? No. No, Monroe watched him carefully. You said you left her apartment around 11 that night, correct? I told you I wasn't, she interrupted softly. We have a witness who saw you near the Ravenel Bridge around midnight. He felt the room spin, his vision blurred. That's a lie. Maybe, Monroe said, closing the folder, but lies have a way of catching up. When Daniel returned home, Emily was standing by the window, staring out at the rain-soaked yard. She turned slowly as he entered. They found something, didn't they? She asked. He didn't answer. She smiled faintly. I told you, Daniel. Secrets always surface. He took a step closer. What did you do? Her eyes darkened. You're not the only one who made a mistake. Before he could speak again, her phone buzzed. She looked down, then handed it to him. A new text from an unknown number. Ask your husband where he was the night she disappeared. Daniel stared at it, heart pounding. Emily, I didn't... She stepped back. Then you'd better hope they believe you. That night, Detective Monroe sat alone at her desk, reviewing case photos. Claire's apartment, the bridge, Daniel's car. Something didn't fit. Then an officer knocked, handing her a plastic evidence bag. Inside, Claire's journal found behind her dresser. Monroe flipped through the pages until she reached the last entry. He said he'd leave her for me. He promised me forever, even if it kills him. Monroe's pen froze midair. She looked up at the board of photos, her expression unreadable. Get me Emily Harper's alibi, she said quietly. Outside, thunder rolled again over Charleston, soft, distant, like the echo of a storm not yet finished. Detective Sarah Monroe wasn't one to chase ghosts, but the Claire Reynolds case was starting to feel like one. The blood in Daniel Harper's car hadn't been confirmed yet, but her instincts told her something wasn't right. It all felt too neat, like someone wanted Daniel to look guilty. That morning, Monroe sat in her dimly lit office, the rain tapping lightly on the window. A young officer entered holding a brown evidence box. From Claire's apartment, ma'am. We logged her digital drives. There's something here you'll want to see. Inside were 3 USB drives labeled Work, Personal, and Private. The last one was encrypted. Monroe's eyes narrowed. Get tech on this, she ordered. While she waited, she opened the work folder. Hundreds of documents, legal memos, and emails from her firm. Claire had been working on a malpractice case involving a real estate developer. It didn't connect directly to Daniel, but Monroe noted a name she'd seen before. Harper Investments. Her brow furrowed. Daniel's late father had founded that company, but Daniel had left years ago. Still, the link was too close to ignore. By afternoon, Tech cracked the private drive. It contained videos, voice recordings, and one folder named Letters Never Sent. Monroe clicked through cautiously. Claire's voice filled the room, shaky but intimate. I know it's wrong, but he said he'd leave her. He said he couldn't live without me. Lately, though, she's been watching us. I can feel it. Another file, dated just a week before she vanished. She knows. I saw her car outside my apartment. I think Emily followed me. I'm scared. Daniel doesn't believe me. Monroe leaned back in her chair. Emily Harper's name was written in red pen in Claire's notes, circled 3 times. That night, Monroe visited the Harper residence again. Emily opened the door, perfectly composed, wearing a gray sweater and pearl earrings. "Detective, is there news?" Monroe stepped inside. "We're rechecking timelines," she said casually. "Do you mind if I ask where you were the night Claire went missing?" Emily smiled faintly. "At home?" "Asleep. Daniel can confirm that. He says you went to bed early, but your phone records show a call around 11:50 p.m. to an unlisted number." Emily blinked. Probably a wrong number. Monroe nodded, glancing toward the office door down the hall. "Mind if I look around?" Emily's lips tightened. "You have a warrant?" "Not yet," Monroe replied, smiling politely. "But I will." Later that evening, Monroe returned to the station and pulled the phone logs again. The number Emily had called was traced to a prepaid burner, purchased 2 days before Claire's disappearance. She checked another record, Claire's phone. It had received a call from the same burner that same night. Monroe's pulse quickened. "So Emily called Claire," she whispered, "right before she vanished." She immediately requested a search warrant for the Harper home. But before it could be approved, she received an unexpected email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "You're looking in the wrong place." Attached was a photo, grainy but clear enough to recognize the face. It was Daniel, standing near the Ravenel Bridge, on the night Claire disappeared. Monroe stared at the image, heart pounding. It wasn't just a random shot. It looked planted, like someone wanted it found. Still, procedure demanded she follow it. She leaned back in her chair, whispering to herself, "If both of them are lying, then who's protecting who?" Outside, a cold wind swept through Charleston as the storm returned. Somewhere in the shadows, someone was watching Monroe's office window, silently, patiently, while a camera light blinked red in the dark. The next morning, a sealed envelope appeared on her desk. No return address. Inside was a single flash drive labeled Emily Harper's Truth. The investigation was about to turn on its head. Detective Sarah Monroe stared at the flash drive sitting on her desk like it was ticking. The label, Emily Harper's Truth, felt almost taunting. She hesitated before inserting it into her computer. The screen flickered to life, opening a single video file dated 2 days before Claire's disappearance. The recording showed Emily Harper sitting at her vanity, her reflection framed by soft lamplight. Her expression was calm, almost eerily composed. "If anyone's watching this," she began, "then something has already gone wrong. I'm not a jealous wife. I'm a woman who's been lied to, humiliated, and replaced. Daniel thinks I don't know, but I've known for months. And Claire, she wasn't innocent." Monroe leaned forward, transfixed. Emily's voice was smooth, deliberate. "Claire wanted more than love. She wanted everything. She wanted my house, my husband, my life. But when you threaten what's mine, I don't just watch it burn. I light the match." The video ended abruptly. Monroe exhaled, the air thick with dread. She immediately called her team. "I want every inch of that house searched again." Now, that afternoon, officers swarmed the Harper property. Daniel stood outside, disoriented, rain soaking his hair as they brought in evidence boxes. Emily, perfectly calm, watched from the porch. "What's going on?" Daniel demanded. Monroe approached him. "We received new evidence, Mr. Harper." You and your wife may both want to speak with counsel inside the house. Crime techs worked methodically. In the study, one of them called out, "Detective!" You should see this. Behind a row of old law books was a hidden panel. Inside, an external hard drive and several manila folders labeled Reynolds. C. Monroe plugged in the drive. Dozens of photos filled the screen. Claire and Daniel together, taken from a distance. Others showed Claire alone, inside her apartment, clearly unaware she was being watched. Monroe's stomach turned. She was stalking her, she murmured. In the living room, Emily sat on the couch, her hands folded. "Detective," she said softly, "you've already made up your mind, haven't you?" "I just want the truth," Monroe replied. Emily tilted her head. "Truth is such a tricky thing. My husband lies. Claire lied. Everyone lies when they're scared." Daniel snapped, "Stop it, Emily! What did you do to her?" Emily looked up, eyes glistening. "You think I hurt her? After everything she took from me?" Monroe watched the two of them, seeing the cracks widen. "Mr. Harper," she said, "you should know, Claire's journal says she was afraid of you, not your wife." Daniel froze. "That's not true. She was upset. I was trying to calm her down. She said she'd tell Emily everything. I begged her not to, but I didn't hurt her." "Then where were you the night she vanished?" Monroe pressed. Daniel's eyes flickered. I went to the bridge to talk to her. She said she'd meet me there." Monroe's voice dropped. "So you lied." "She wasn't there when I arrived," he said desperately. "Her car was parked, but she was gone." "I swear, Detective, she was gone." Emily's lips curved into the faintest smile. "How convenient." Monroe studied her. "Mrs. Harper, I saw your video." "You admitted to knowing about the affair." Emily nodded calmly. "Of course. I'm not ashamed of knowing the truth. But you said something else. You said you'd light the match. What did you mean by that?" Emily's smile didn't waver. "Sometimes you burn a lie down to see what's left standing." The tension in the room was suffocating. Monroe motioned to her team. "Take them both in." At the precinct, Daniel and Emily were placed in separate rooms. Monroe started with Daniel. He was pacing, hands trembling. "You have to believe me." "Claire called me that night, said she was scared. When I got there, her car door was open, her purse still inside. I thought maybe she'd gone to the water." His voice cracked. "I tried to find her." "Why didn't you call 911? He hesitated. "Because Emily was already suspicious. She'd been following me, checking my phone." I panicked. Monroe leaned forward. "So you left the scene of a possible crime to protect your affair?" He dropped his head. "I didn't kill her." Later, Monroe entered the other interrogation room. Emily was sitting perfectly still, sipping coffee. "Mrs. Harper," Monroe began, "your husband says he went to the bridge. He claims you were following him that night. Is that true?" Emily set her cup down gently. "I followed him, yes. But I wasn't the only one there." Monroe frowned. "Meaning?" Emily met her eyes. "Someone else wanted Claire gone. Someone who needed her to disappear." "Who?" Emily smiled faintly. "Why don't you check your own department?" The words hung heavy in the air. Monroe froze. "What are you implying?" Emily leaned forward, whispering. "The night she vanished, Claire called someone else. Someone who promised to protect her. She thought it was you." Monroe's heart stuttered. "Me?" Emily nodded slowly. "You'll find the call on the drive labeled private." She recorded it. Monroe stood abruptly, leaving the room. Back at her desk, she opened the private folder again. A new file had been added, time-stamped that same morning. She clicked play. Claire's voice, terrified and trembling, filled the speakers. "Detective Monroe, it's Claire. I think he knows. Please, if anything happens to me." The recording cut off with a sharp gasp, then silence. Monroe stared at the screen, pulse racing. How had this file not been there before? Who added it? When she looked up, a message was already waiting in her inbox. You can't save them all. And attached was a photo of Monroe's own car, parked outside her apartment. The hunter was no longer hunting alone. 6 months later, the town of Maplewood no longer whispered. It shouted. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning. Headlines screamed betrayal, murder, and madness. The Harper affair. Love, lies, and death. Inside, the courtroom was suffocatingly still. Daniel Harper sat at the defense table, his once polished demeanor now reduced to a hollow stare. Across from him, Emily Harper sat behind the prosecution bench, a witness for the state, perfectly composed in a navy dress and pearls. Detective Sarah Monroe sat in the back row, her notebook in hand, eyes shadowed by exhaustion. The case had consumed her. The evidence was messy, too clean in some places, too convenient in others. But the jury only saw one story: the husband who killed his mistress to keep his marriage intact. The prosecution built its case like a slow knife. They painted Daniel as obsessive, manipulative, desperate to silence Claire when she threatened to expose the affair. The voicemail, the bridge sighting, the blood in his trunk, all pieces of a puzzle that screamed guilt. Mr. Harper, the prosecutor said, pacing before the jury, you lied to police, destroyed evidence, and met the victim hours before she vanished. You expect this court to believe you're innocent? Daniel looked up from the stand, voice cracking. I loved her. I would never hurt her. I went to meet her that night, but she was already gone. The prosecutor's voice sharpened. Gone? Or did you make her disappear? The jury stirred. Cameras clicked. Emily's expression didn't change. Monroe watched, unease curling in her stomach. Something still didn't fit. Claire's body had never been found. The timeline, the missing files, the mysterious flash drive, it all gnawed at her. Then came the defense's turn. Daniel's lawyer played the footage of Emily's confession, arguing it showed her jealousy and motive. This wasn't a crime of passion, the lawyer said. It was a crime of revenge. But the prosecution was ready. That video is theater, they countered. Emily Harper was a victim of her husband's deceit. She found her strength, not her guilt. When Emily took the stand, the courtroom leaned forward. Mrs. Harper, the prosecutor began softly, how would you describe your marriage? Emily looked down, voice trembling just enough to seem human. Broken. I tried to fix it. I knew about Claire, but I didn't know how deep it went. When she disappeared, I thought maybe Daniel had finally done what he always threatened. Daniel's head snapped up. That's a lie, the judge's gavel cracked. Order, Monroe's eyes narrowed. Threatened? There had been no record of threats in any police report. She flipped through her notes, Claire's phone logs, Emily's burner number, the anonymous emails. Then she noticed something. One call connecting Emily's burner to a device registered to the local police network. Her chest tightened. Someone inside had helped cover something up. On the stand, Emily dabbed her eyes delicately. I just want justice for Claire. Daniel rose, shouting, You set me up, Emily! You wanted this. The courtroom erupted in chaos before the judge called recess. Outside in the hallway, Monroe cornered the IT officer. I need full access to archived call logs from March 12th, she said urgently. The officer hesitated. That's classified under court seal, detective. Then unseal it, she hissed. Now! Minutes later, her laptop loaded a series of internal transmissions. One stood out, a call between Emily Harper's burner and Detective Monroe's precinct line, time-stamped at 11:51 p.m., the night Claire vanished. But Monroe hadn't been on duty that night. Someone else had used her login. Her pulse pounded. Someone had framed Daniel and manipulated her investigation from within. Back inside the courtroom, the verdict was about to be read. Daniel's lawyer whispered a final prayer. Emily's fingers curled neatly around her handbag. The judge spoke, voice solemn. On the charge of second-degree murder, we find the defendant. The doors burst open. Monroe strode in, holding a flash drive high. Your Honor, the evidence you've been shown is compromised. This trial cannot proceed. Gasps rippled through the room. Emily's face went white. The judge frowned. Detective, this is highly irregular. Monroe stepped forward. Then you'll want to see what's on this drive. It's a deleted security feed from the Ravenel Bridge, recovered this morning. It shows who was really there that night. The gallery fell silent. Emily's hand trembled ever so slightly, her perfect calm cracking for the first time. The judge sighed heavily. Court is adjourned until further notice. As the bailiff called order, Monroe glanced at Emily, whose lips moved faintly, forming silent words meant only for her. You're too late. The storm that had started with a secret dinner was far from over. The next chapter of Maplewood's tragedy was just beginning. The courtroom emptied slowly, but the echoes of chaos lingered like ghosts in the marble hall. Detective Sarah Monroe stood in the doorway, the flash drive burning cold in her palm. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but all she heard was Emily Harper's whisper, "You're too late." By evening, Monroe sat alone in the precinct's evidence lab. Rain drummed against the windows again. Maplewood's storms never seemed to end. She inserted the drive, her fingers trembling. A single video file loaded, Ravenelbridge_cam_0312.mov. She pressed play. The grainy footage showed the bridge under dim streetlights. A car pulled over, Claire's. Minutes later, another car arrived. Daniel Harper stepped out, looking frantic. He called her name, pacing near the railing. But then, a third figure appeared. Monroe leaned closer. The woman's silhouette was unmistakable. Emily Harper. Emily approached Claire, not Daniel. The two argued, their gestures sharp and desperate. Claire stepped backward, fear visible even through the low resolution. Then Emily lunged forward. There was a struggle, a flash of movement, and Claire fell. The video ended in static. Monroe's breath caught. The timestamp matched the night Claire vanished. Emily had been there. She'd been the last one to see her alive. She grabbed her coat and raced out into the storm. Emily Harper's mansion glowed softly through the rain, serene and unbothered, as if it didn't sit atop a web of lies. Monroe didn't wait for backup. She pushed through the door, shouting, "Emily, it's over!" Emily appeared at the top of the staircase, elegant as ever, a glass of wine in hand. "Detective," she said, her voice smooth, "you should have called first." Monroe held up her badge. "The footage from the bridge." "I saw it." Emily tilted her head slightly as if recalling a distant memory. "Ah, so someone finally found it." "You pushed her," Monroe said, voice trembling with restrained anger. "Claire Reynolds didn't disappear. You killed her." Emily descended the stairs slowly, her expression unreadable. "Killed? That's a strong word. I'd call it correction. Claire wanted to destroy what I built. She thought she could take Daniel, take my life, and walk away untouched." Monroe's voice hardened. "You could have walked away, too." Emily smiled faintly. "And let him win?" "No, Detective. I just evened the scales." Monroe stepped closer. "You recorded that confession video before the murder, didn't you? You knew this would happen. You built the entire narrative around Daniel." Emily's eyes gleamed. "Daniel was sloppy. He left traces everywhere, texts, calls, jealousy. All I did was nudge the truth in the right direction." "You staged everything," Monroe whispered. "I gave the town what it wanted," Emily said calmly. "A villain, a headline. Close Your Thunder boomed outside. The lights flickered. Monroe's phone buzzed. Backup was minutes away. "Where's the body, Emily?" Emily turned toward the window, watching the rain roll down the glass. "You think I'd leave her on the bridge?" Number. Claire deserved better than that. She paused, then looked back, eyes cold. "I buried her where Daniel proposed to me. Fitting, don't you think?" Monroe's pulse raced. "You're confessing to murder." "I'm confessing to peace," Emily corrected. "For the first time in years, the noise is gone." The sound of sirens grew faint in the distance. Emily didn't flinch. "Tell me something, detective," she said softly. "If a woman kills her husband's mistress to save her marriage, is she evil or just human?" Monroe stared at her. "That's not your decision to make." Emily smiled. "No, but it's yours to judge." The front door burst open. Officers swarmed in, surrounding her. Emily didn't resist. She set her glass down neatly on the table and extended her wrists. "Be gentle," she murmured. "I bruise easily." Hours later, the interrogation room was silent. Emily sat opposite Monroe, hands cuffed, eyes sharp, despite her calm. "Daniel's free," Monroe said quietly. "You'll stand trial for Claire's murder." Emily chuckled softly. "Free? You really think he'll ever be free of me?" Monroe frowned. "What do you mean?" Emily leaned forward, whispering, "You should watch the rest of that video." Monroe's stomach sank. Back at the precinct, she replayed the footage from the bridge, frame by frame. After Claire's fall, the camera glitched. But a few seconds later, Daniel appeared again. He looked down over the edge, then stepped closer to the railing. Something shimmered in his hand. A phone. He dialed a number. The call log, timestamp 12:08 a.m., matched one made to Emily Harper's burner. Monroe froze. Claire was already gone. Emily was gone. But Daniel stayed. In the final frames, he looked into the dark water and whispered something the camera barely caught. "It's done." The feed ended. The next morning, headlines exploded again. "Emily Harper confesses, husband still under suspicion." Daniel refused all interviews. He moved out of Maplewood quietly, the press calling him the man who lost everything. But Monroe couldn't let it go. Something about his calm at the end of that video. It wasn't grief. It was relief. Weeks later, construction workers near the Harper's old lake house unearthed a shallow grave. Inside was a body, female, mid-30s. DNA confirmed it. Claire Reynolds. But there was something else buried with her. A silver wedding ring engraved with the initials E.H. and D.H. Monroe stared at the evidence photo. Why would Emily bury her own ring with the body she wanted to hide? The answer hit like thunder. She hadn't. That night, Monroe received one final envelope. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. Again, she plugged it in. The file opened to security footage from the county jail. Emily Harper's cell. In the footage, Emily was lying on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. Then she turned her head toward the camera and smiled faintly. "He always did like to finish what I started." Then the screen cut to black. Monroe sat frozen, the storm echoing outside. Emily was behind bars. Claire was dead. But Daniel Harper, wherever he was, had vanished completely. The case that began with love and betrayal had ended with a question no one could answer. Who was the real killer? The woman who pushed, or the man who watched her fall? And as thunder rolled over Maplewood once more, Monroe whispered to herself, "There's never just one truth, only the story that survives." The rain had stopped, but Maplewood still smelled of thunder and old secrets. Detective Sarah Monroe sat in her car outside the Harper estate, staring at the darkened windows that once glittered with privilege. Now they looked hollow, like eyes that had seen too much. Emily Harper was in prison, serving a life sentence. Daniel Harper was gone, vanished without a trace. And Claire Reynolds lay buried in a quiet field under a cold gray sky. The town wanted closure, But Monroe knew better. There were still pieces missing, and every instinct told her Daniel was one of them. That night, as she filed her final report, Monroe's phone buzzed. Unknown number. No caller ID. She hesitated before answering. "Detective Monroe," she said carefully. The voice was calm, male, familiar. "Still chasing ghosts, Detective?" Her heart clenched. "Daniel Harper." He chuckled softly. "You always were the sharp one." "Where are you?" she demanded. "You ran after your wife's arrest." "That alone makes you guilty of something, maybe," he said. "Or maybe I just wanted to let the story finish itself." Emily was always the star, wasn't she? Monroe gritted her teeth. She confessed to killing Claire. "Confession," Daniel said slowly, "isn't the same as truth." Emily liked control. Even in her downfall, she wanted the last word. She couldn't stand the idea that someone else might have ended it for her. Monroe froze. "Ended what?" "The marriage," Daniel said, his voice colder now. "The lies. The performance. You think Emily was the only one who could plan?" There was silence on the line. Then Daniel whispered, "Check the footage again, the night at the bridge." Watch her hands. She never pushed. She reached for help. Claire fell on her own. Monroe's mind raced. "That's not what the video shows. Because Emily edited it. She sent you that drive herself, the line went dead." Monroe rushed to the evidence room, adrenaline surging. She loaded the original footage, slowing it frame by frame. This time, she noticed something she hadn't before. A flicker, a cut that didn't match the camera's time code. A gap of 6 seconds. Her stomach dropped. Emily had doctored the footage before sending it. She wanted the world to see her as the monster, not the victim. Why? As Monroe stared at the paused frame of Emily's terrified face reaching out, something shifted inside her. The truth had been rewritten too many times. Maybe Claire's death wasn't murder. Maybe it was something darker, an ending all three of them orchestrated in their own way. Days later, Monroe drove to Maplewood Cemetery. The graves of Claire and Emily sat side by side, per Emily's will. A strange request, honored without question. She knelt between the two stones, reading the inscriptions. Claire Reynolds, gone but not forgotten. Emily Harper, till death do us part. The irony burned. Wind swept through the trees, rustling leaves like whispers. That's when Monroe noticed the fresh flowers placed between the graves. A small white card tucked inside read, "For both of them, they deserved better." -D quote, she looked around. No one, only the long road stretching toward the fog. That night, Monroe filed her final note. Case technically closed. Verdict uncertain. Both Emily and Daniel Harper played roles impossible to separate. Whether love or guilt motivated them, the result remains the same. 3 lives lost to obsession and a truth that can no longer be proven. She closed the file but couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching. 2 weeks later, a guard at Maplewood Correctional reported something strange. Emily Harper's cell was found empty during rounds. No signs of escape, no broken locks, no tunnels, no disturbances. The security footage simply showed her lying in bed one moment, gone the next. When Monroe was notified, she didn't respond right away. She drove back to the bridge instead, standing where it had all begun. The water shimmered beneath the moonlight. A single red rose floated by, carried gently by the current. A whisper of a voice echoed faintly in the wind. One she couldn't tell was Emily's or Daniel's. "Till death do us part." Monroe closed her eyes, clutching her coat tighter as the night swallowed the sound. The case was over, but Maplewood's secrets never truly rested. And somewhere, beyond the rain and memory, 2 ghosts still danced on the edge of the bridge, forever bound by the promise they couldn't keep. 3 months after the case was closed, Detective Monroe received a plain brown envelope. No return address. Inside was a USB drive. She plugged it in. A single file appeared. Maplewood_final.mp4. The video showed a motel room. The camera faced the bed, the same room where Daniel and Claire had met in secret. Daniel sat before the lens, eyes hollow, voice trembling. "If you're watching this, it means Emily's plan worked." She said love should end where it began. I thought she meant forgiveness. He looked off screen. But she never forgives. She waits. The door behind him creaked open. Emily's silhouette appeared, calm, smiling. "I told you, Daniel," she whispered, "till death do us part." A flash, a gunshot, static. The screen went black. Detective Monroe stared in silence. Then, for the briefest second, the reflection of the recording camera flickered, showing Emily's face, not Daniel's, holding the gun. The timestamp? Dated 2 days after Emily's reported death.